All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into the unseen realm.
Ooh, yeah, this one is a doozy.
This YouTube video makes some really wild claims about like a whole hidden supernatural world,
Yeah.
like right there in the Bible, hiding in plain sight. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And it's interesting, it really makes you rethink some of those assumptions we have about angels and demons and all that.
Yeah, totally. Like when you picture an angel, you picture those big white wings, right?
Right.
And demons, always with the horns and the pitchfork.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But this video, it points out that those details, like they're not actually in the Bible.
Yeah. Those are all later interpretations.
Exactly. So where did they even get those ideas? Well, this is where it gets interesting. The video dives deep into this Hebrew word, Elohim.
Okay.
Now, we often translate this as God, right?
Right.
But the video argues it actually has a much broader meaning.
Yeah, it's not as simple as we might think, is it?
Not at all. So what are you saying? Elohim. It's not just talking about the one God, like the God.
That's what they're saying, yeah. The video's whole point is that Elohim actually refers to a whole class of supernatural beings.
Okay.
And Yahweh, like the God of Israel, he's like the top dog. He's the ultimate authority.
Okay, so he's like the CEO of the supernatural world.
Exactly. But there are other players in the game, right? These other sons of God who are part of his divine council.
So like a heavenly board meeting advising Yahweh.
That's the idea. They had a say in how God interacted with the world, apparently.
Wow, I've never pictured it that way.
Right. It kind of changes things.
Oh, totally. But wait, if these sons of God are working with God, who's causing all the trouble, I mean, the video mentions something about rebellions.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get really wild. The video claims there were actually 3 separate rebellions against Yahweh, not just the one in the Garden of Eden.
3? Wait, hold on. Most people only know about Adam and Eve, right? What are the other 2 about?
Well, one of the rebellions, and this is where it gets really interesting, involves these sons of God interbreeding with humans.
Wait, what? Hold on a second. Sons of God, like having kids with humans? That sounds like some Greek mythology stuff right there.
Right. It's a wild thought, but it's right there in Genesis 6. The video says these unions, they resulted in the Nephilim.
The Nephilim?
Yeah, they were like giants, basically.
Okay, so like Goliath.
Yeah, exactly. Like Goliath. And the video even suggests that maybe like those giant people Moses and Joshua had to fight in Canaan.
Oh, right, when they were taking over the Promised Land.
Exactly. The video is suggesting they could have been like descendants of these Nephilim.
Whoa. So you're telling me those battles in the Old Testament, they might have had this whole other supernatural thing going on underneath.
That's what they're saying. Like there's this whole other layer to it. And it all ties into this concept the video calls cosmic geography.
Cosmic geography.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're just messing with me.
No, seriously. So the ancient Israelites, they believed that different spiritual beings, like those Elohim we were talking about, they had dominion over different parts of the world.
So like each nation had its own like guardian angel.
Kind of. But more like a spiritual overlord, I guess. And the Israelites, they believed their God, Yahweh, he had dominion over Canaan.
The Promised Land.
Right. So when they were conquering Canaan, they were, in a way, taking back territory that had fallen under the influence of these other Elohim.
So it was like a turf war, but like a spiritual turf war.
Exactly. They saw it as holy ground that rightfully belonged to Yahweh. It's a wild concept, right?
That's an understatement. Okay, so where does Jesus fit into all of this? Was he in on this whole cosmic geography thing?
Oh, absolutely. The video argues that Jesus didn't just know about this unseen world, he actively confronted it.
Really?
How so?
Well, remember when Jesus went to Caesarea Philippi?
Caesarea Philippi. Okay, refresh my memory. What was going on there? So the video points out that Caesarea Philippi was this major center for pagan worship. It was right near Mount Hermon, which, if you remember from the Old Testament...
Wasn't that where, like, a bunch of weird stuff happened?
Yes, exactly. The Bible links Mount Hermon with some intense spiritual activity. Some will even say demonic activity. It was like enemy territory, spiritually speaking.
Oh.
And it was right there in Caesarea Philippi that Jesus said, "The gates of hell will not prevail against my church."
Whoa, he wasn't kidding around, was he? So he was making a statement, like right in the devil's backyard.
Exactly. The video suggests that he was intentionally challenging those spiritual forces, like he was reclaiming that territory for God.
Wow. It's like you read those stories in the Gospels and you don't always realize what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. But the video is saying there's this whole other level to it, this cosmic battle that's been raging since the beginning of time.
Okay, so then how does Jesus's death, How does that fit into this whole picture?
That's where things get really interesting. Think
Yeah.
about it. Jesus, he was crucified outside the city walls of Jerusalem, right? At a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull.
Yeah, I remember that from Sunday school.
Okay, so the video's point is this wasn't just a random location.
Okay.
It was actually a very deliberate choice that connected back to those ancient Jewish rituals of atonement.
Atonement. You mean like Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
the Day of Atonement.
Exactly. So in those rituals, they would take a goat, a scapegoat, and they would send it out into the wilderness, carrying all the sins of the people.
Right, to symbolically get rid of their sin.
Exactly. And the video suggests that Jesus, by dying outside the city, outside the camp, he was enacting a kind of cosmic version of that ritual.
Wow. So Jesus, he became the ultimate scapegoat, taking on the sins of the world.
The video suggests something along those lines, yeah? It's
Yeah.
a powerful image, right? But it doesn't end there. This whole idea of a connection between the physical and the spiritual,
Yeah.
this is where things get really interesting for us as Christians today.
So this connection between the spiritual and the physical, the video keeps coming back to it. It makes you wonder, like, how does this all apply to us, like to everyday Christians?
Totally. The video actually suggests that even something like baptism for those early Christians, it took on a whole new meaning with this cosmic battle in mind.
Oh, really? Like more than just joining the church?
Yeah, it's like they weren't just going through the motions. For those early believers, baptism, it was like a line in the sand. They were declaring their allegiance to Jesus, like pledging to fight on his side in this cosmic war.
Wow. So no pressure or anything, right?
Right, no pressure. But it really makes you think about the weight of those decisions, you know? It's like, if this cosmic battle is real and the church is this force for good, this sacred space, like the video says,
How do we actually live that out? Are we supposed to be like casting out demons and stuff?
well, the video doesn't necessarily mean it literally, but it does challenge us to see our everyday actions through this lens of spiritual warfare. Like, remember that idea of holy ground?
Right. It started with the Garden of Eden, then it expanded to the nation of Israel.
And now, through Jesus, the video is saying it's found within believers. We are the holy ground.
So it's like we're walking around these moving targets in this cosmic battle.
You could say that. The choices we make, the words we speak, they all have significance. It's not about living in fear, though, right? It's about recognizing the reality of this unseen world.
Yeah, and the power we have through Jesus.
Exactly. The power to bring light into the darkness.
But it's still hard, like the world can be a pretty dark place. How do we square this idea of this unseen battle with, like, the fact that bad things still happen?
Right. It's that whole already but not yet thing, isn't it? It's a tension that early Christians knew all too well. I mean, even the Apostle Paul, he faced persecution, opposition, even though he'd seen incredible victories through Christ.
So even armed with the Holy Spirit, it was still a struggle.
Yeah, it was. He even describes it in his letters, like battling against these rulers and authorities and powers.
Wow, so he was really using that language of spiritual warfare.
Yeah, he was. And it makes you realize, like, we're not alone in this.
For sure. So if even Paul struggled, how do we stand firm? What does the video say?
Well, one thing it really emphasizes is community. Like, we're not meant to fight this battle alone. The church, it's meant to be a united front,
Strength in numbers. But if we're not out there, like, drawing battle plans against demons, what does that look like practically?
It starts with this shift in perspective. Like, the video challenges us to ask, okay, if this is real, if this unseen world is real, how does that change things? How does that impact our relationships, our work, the way we move through the world?
Man, it's a lot to process.
It really is. And the video doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it opens up some really interesting questions.
It definitely does. This wasn't just a quick dip in the kiddie pool. This was a deep dive.
For sure.
We were down there with the anglerfish.
In the trenches.
This video, it makes you see the Bible and honestly the whole world in a totally different light.
It really does make you think.
Yeah. So what do you think, listeners? Ready to see your world through the lens of the unseen realm? We've only just scratched the surface here. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows what you might find. Until next time, keep diving deep.